My grandpa was over 100 and still fishing. It took him a lot longer to get his tackle organized now, and he mainly fished in daylight and not that far from the dock. That last time, we motored up one of the little fingers of the lake that we never used to bother with. None of the other real fishermen did either. Though at high water, which it was on the day I'm talking about, it was well flooded back up in the trees and rocks, and there were all kinds of little pockets worth fishing. I had never heard of any real fish being caught up there. Who drives 20 or 30 miles to the dock and then takes the first turn on a rivulet into the hills when you know the old riverbed has depths to 100 feet out towards the big TVA Dam? I think it was called Poorland Creek. We started fishing right at the mouth. I got the feeling there had been times when Pops had to go back pretty much right away, and he didn't want to get caught way back up in there. But then we gradually worked our way up into some of the shallower forks. Now I have to say, by this time in life, I had been working in the big city and long since quit serious fishing. I just came back for old times now. I had kept at it through my 20s, but gradually lost interest, maybe simply because I hadn't found anybody to fish with up north, even though back then I could fish for hours and never see another soul. I had started fishing at age 3 and been consumed by it throughout my younger years and teens. It was you against the universe, to find out how it all worked, to see what it had to offer, to discover what was beneath the surface, to learn about chance, good luck, and bad, close calls, boredom, astonishment, beauty, danger, tragedy, manliness, steadfastness, perseverance, all of it. Not sex or romance, in all fairness. Now, mainly, I was absorbing on this day the sights and sounds and smells from the old days, just being with Pops. I noticed Pops was fishing the easy stuff, the stuff I used to go for, where you throw your lure at a specific stump or rock with the idea that the fish will rush from his hide. Whereas most big and numerous fish are caught in deeper water, where you know there is cover, but you don't know exactly where it is. At one point, a small bass or maybe a bluegill nudged the spinner on my Dalton Special, creating rings onto the calm surface. Pop saw it and said, "Strike." I replied, "Just a little one." Pop said, "A strike is a strike," with considerable glee. That was new. Back in the day, he would have said, "No point in fishing here." What he meant was, if minnows can swim without worry and lip your lure, then there are no big fish around. I was using a Dalton because it stayed on the surface and out of trouble. I didn't want to get hung up or cross Pop's line, and it made a bright little splash when you twitched it. It was fun to work even when you knew you weren't going to catch anything. Dusk was starting to spread out, and I knew we wouldn't be fishing much longer. There was no worry because we hadn't gotten that far from the dock. We hadn't caught anything, and it was obvious we weren't going to. But Pops was still happily humming and throwing his crankbait along the shore. I flipped the Dalton out a little past a rock outcropping and marveled at the beauty of the place, the quiet, the humming of our reels, the background of cicadas and katydids, even an early chuckwheels. Just beyond where I could see my lure in the sheen of light on the surface, there was a plunging sound in the direction of my cast, like somebody had jumped off the shore and slammed an inverted bucket into the calm water ahead. My reel was torn out of my hand, and I almost lost my rod. I had gotten lazy. This never could have happened to a serious fisherman. An enormous force ran the tension out on my reel, and then everything went slack. And then the fish doubled my rod and zoomed directly under the boat. I jammed my rod tip into the water in the hopes the line wouldn't snap, but I couldn't flip around past the bow to try to get lined up with the fish. I never did get control of my rig. The line went slack again, and I knew he was off. And then, behind the boat, with the fading light behind him, the biggest, blackest, oldest, ugliest, stumpiest, wisest largemouth I had ever seen or imagined cleared the water and looked at me with the biggest eye a fish has ever used to examine and laugh at a mere fishing mortal on this planet. And then he plunged back into the water and blasted himself with his mighty tail on toward the main lake. That was the fish I had been fishing for all those years. I had let down my guard, lost my edge, allowed myself to be distracted by less important things. He gave me my chance, and I missed him. There would never be another like him. Of course, I would have turned him loose anyway, but this was very different. I had never held him. I had never known the exact jagged line pattern on his glistening sides, or seen him eye to eye in the boat. He had never had to concede that I had found him out and fooled him. He had never known that I would have had to admit face to face that he was the greatest of them all. Now I could only estimate from my one glimpse, a glimpse I would never forget. Incredibly, my Dalton was floating in the water by the boat within reach of my hand, still with a frayed length of monofilm hanging tied to its nose. I picked it up off the surface and returned it, dripping with the splash of the struggle, to my tackle box. Pops had sensed the commotion, but it was too dark already to really see what had been going on. I had obviously been dancing around in the boat for some reason. "I think I had a big one," I said. "Yep, they're in there, boy," he said. "You just got to keep fishing for 'em."